Although I had tons of fun watching Black Clover, Sword of the Wizard King, there was one thing that nagged at the back of my mind as I watched the film. Something that I was hoping would be addressed and explored, but never was, at least not in a way that I felt was truly satisfying. What's more, I haven't even seen so much as a post or a single video talking about it either. So let's get right into it and explore the character of Conrad Leto. But it's not just him. The convictions and motivations of Conrad and his fellow Wizard Kings Jester Grandross, Edward Avalanche, and Princia Funnybunny, not nearly as cuddly as her name might suggest, are extremely important not only to the plot of the movie, but to the overarching narrative and story of Black Clover itself. And that's why it's a little disappointing that they're mostly glossed over and don't ever get meaningfully explored in the film. As a matter of fact, I'd even say that the previous Wizard Kings display a much better understanding of the Clover Kingdom's societal issues than we're led to believe, and that their plan to just flip the table and start over from scratch isn't exactly the worst idea. Now, don't go reporting me to the FBI, I'm no advocate for genocide, but considering the goals that Yuno and Asta have made for themselves, taking a path of the revolutionary like Conrad did could very well be the road that they need to take in order to achieve them. Before we get into that though, who is Conrad Leto and what exactly does he want to achieve? Conrad was the 27th Wizard King, making him Julius's direct predecessor. Our favorite comrade grew up isolated from his peers despite being of noble birth because of his magic ability, which gave him the potential to steal the magic of others. His key magic is as powerful as it is unique, so those around him were especially cautious since his power makes him such a potential wildcard. Regardless, he worked hard to better himself and his magic in the hopes of closing the gap between himself and others, and eventually he became a magic knight where he met a young Julius as well as another friend of theirs, Lovelia, who came from the Forsaken Realm. Now, having his own friends to support and encourage him for the very first time, Conrad was able to work even harder and became a Magic Knight captain before eventually being crowned the 27th Wizard King, finally earning him the respect of all in the Clover Kingdom, or so he thought. On one of his missions, Conrad and his squad fell victim to an ambush facilitated by the royals of the Clover Kingdom, who maintained their hostility towards him after all these years. This ambush led to the deaths of his entire squad, including that of his vice captain and now wife, Lovelia. Enraged but still determined, Conrad sought to dedicate his reign as the Wizard King to addressing and eradicating the corruption within his kingdom, but at every turn was met with overwhelming opposition from the upper class of Clover's society. Finally, having concluded that the Wizard King didn't possess the means enough to bring about the change that he desired for his people, he concluded to rebel against it instead. After stealing the national treasure of the kingdom, a magic tool known as the Sword of Elstokia, he planned to combine its ability to absorb and store magic and even souls with his key magic that shared similar abilities in order to destroy the Clover Kingdom in its entirety. Afterwards, he would collect the souls of the deceased with the sword and revive only those that he believed would be capable of living in a world of equality without prejudice. He had tried this once before 10 years in the past, but was sealed away by Julius using his time magic. After Julius was defeated in the war with the elves, his seal broke, allowing Conrad to return, this time with backup for some insurance. Now, before I continue, bad plan. This is a horrible plan. Apart from the obvious genocide, one, how are you going to decide who's capable of living in an equal society and who's not? Is it just the nobles and the royals that you have issues with? What are you going to do, make them line up and vet everybody one by one? Who's making the rules anyways? You? Sounds kind of dictatorish if you ask me. 2, killing everybody, including the innocent, just to make sure that a few bad apples stay dead is wild. Like, that is a whole new dimension of extreme. And finally 3, what's to stop this from happening again in the future? So you fix the issue of inequality for today's generation. Now, how do you ensure people don't just start oppressing people all over again generations down the road after you're long gone? Magic inequality is still a thing, so the strong still have the means of oppressing the weak at some point. Like I said, this plan is cheeks, and does little to actually fix the issues Conrad's trying to address in any meaningful manner. He is somewhat on the right track though. His conclusion that the very foundation of the nation is corrupt is in fact true, as is the fact that the office of the Wizard King is actually too limited to allow for any meaningful change to take place. And that's not even my opinion. That's been proven multiple times within the very history of the Clover Kingdom itself. Just ask these guys. We can't discuss Conrad's character without also understanding why he assembled the team that he did, especially considering that he had 23 other options to choose from. On the surface, it looks like a pretty well-rounded team. Princia covers their offensive bases, she's the equivalent of 1,000 soldiers with their strength and abilities alone, while Jester, with his barrier magic, covers them defensively. Edward rounds off the team well by specializing in both, while also being able to establish a type of home court advantage with his ability to completely overwhelm and dominate any space with sheer cold. Looking a bit deeper though, it's clear that Conrad's understanding of his nation's history plays a much more significant role in his selection process. Let's take Jester for example. After witnessing and personally suffering tremendous loss and betrayal throughout the many conflicts Clover had with the Diamond Kingdom during his time, he was driven to start a campaign of conquest for all 4 kingdoms in the name of establishing peace and unity across the land. As scary as that sounds, he actually seemed to have been gaining a lot of support since it's implied that he actually was trying to go about brokering true peace between the nations. He was gaining so much support in fact that it made Clover's royals a little too uncomfy, so they set up a trap for him to get him to stop all that boat rocking and power imbalancing he was up to, which led to his demise before he could accomplish his true goal. Considering the lengths that he was willing to go through as well as the opposition that he faced from his own nation's ruling class, it's no wonder that he'd be willing to align himself with Conrad upon learning his plans. This goes even more so for Princia and Edward. First off, Princia, unlike the other wizard kings, didn't have the luxury of a noble upbringing. Despite being born into a family of nobles herself, her house fell and her family's land was stolen by royals after the fact, leading to a life of poverty for them. In an effort to restore honor to her family's name, she joined the Blue Rose Magic Knight Squad, quickly rising up in the ranks due to her overwhelming combat ability. That being said, despite earning enough merit to become the 11th Wizard King, Queen? She was never really able to earn her respect in the eyes of Clover's elite. Her incredible strength, which had helped earn her position, was merely seen as a tool to be exploited. Like I mentioned earlier, she's a literal one-woman army, so in yet another major conflict with the Diamond Kingdom, they come up quite a bit with these 3, she had to hold down the front lines, taking on the majority of the enemy's forces solo. This led to Clover emerging from the conflict victorious. However, unbeknownst to Princia, her family and friends had been kidnapped by the enemy while she was fighting. What's worse, Clover's generals knew what was going on but didn't want to sacrifice the advantage of having Princia herself as the main attacking force, so they made every effort to hide this information from her until the war had ended. Unfortunately, she never saw her loved ones again. This isn't where her story ends though, unfortunately. Once she'd learned what had happened, Princia became enraged. However, the royals and nobles took care to protect themselves by having her stripped of her title, sealing her magic, and imprisoning her so that she couldn't turn her awesome strength back in their direction. She later died a disgraced prisoner trying to protect the town where she was located in during a bandit attack. Even after all that though, none of it holds a candle to the tragic life of Edward Avalanche. Edward was born into a noble household and showed great potential and promise for becoming a powerful magic knight, but he didn't really care about any of that. He was way more interested in actually serving people. He was so dedicated, in fact, that he spent the majority of his early life in churches in the common and forsaken realms, a very uncommon thing for someone of his status to do. This became an extremely formative part of Edward's life. Most high-class citizens of the Clover Kingdom are so far removed from the everyday struggles of the common man that they behave almost as though they think themselves of a different species entirely. On the contrary, Edward made a dedicated effort to intimately understand and empathize with the concerns of the have-nots in his nation. This led to him eventually becoming a priest, dedicating his life to an orphanage he ran which sought to help those in need. That's when tragedy struck for the first time as Diamond Kingdom soldiers raided his church and killed all of the children. After dispatching the raiders himself in what was likely his very first act of violence, Edward had finally found the motivation to become a magic knight in the hopes of preventing more tragedy from taking place. It was at this point that Edward's background truly began to shine. He was born to serve, and his considerate and empathetic nature made it all but obvious that he was on a fast track to becoming the Wizard King with no real obstacle in his way, Or so it seemed. You see, Edward also couldn't help but be transparent and deliberate about his desire to eliminate the class divides that he saw holding back the Clover Kingdom's citizens during his early days. And I'll let you take a wild guess as to who took some beef with that. It was light work for the nobles and royals again to interfere and have Edward's title of Wizard King revoked. This made him snap. Now, with absolutely nothing to lose, Edward ended up starting a resistance movement against the Clover Kingdom's upper class specifically, and even made some progress in eliminating certain key figures. He came to the exact conclusion that Conrad did and understood that working from within the confines of a rigged system ultimately cannot change the system. So he decided to disrupt it instead. Before he could though, the resistance was stopped and Edward was executed. There's a certain phrase coined by civil rights activist and author Audre Lorde that I think helps explain where these guys are coming from, which is, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. This was the title of a collection of essays she wrote about social justice and structural inequality, and at the risk of grossly oversimplifying, it essentially means that you can't bring about true drastic change to a society by appealing to its traditional sensibilities and social tools. If those sensibilities and tools are the things that are keeping the wheels turning in the first place, you have to break the mold to make any progress at all. My belief is that Conrad and his fellow Wizard Kings and Queen internalized some form of this idea, granted with varying degrees of understanding. And again, I am oversimplifying, so for a better, more thought-out explanation on the idea, feel free to check out the link in the bio. Anyway, this is what's at the heart of my dissatisfaction with the film, because none of what I discussed pertaining to the backstories and motivations of the Wizard Kings and Queen ever gets talked about, save for a quick exposition dump from Julius after the final battle. And even then, after that, everybody kinda just goes, oh, well, that must have sucked. And then it's back to happily ever after. The key conflict in Sword of the Wizard King comes from the fact that Asta represents Conrad's idealism before becoming a revolutionary, meaning that the two ultimately see the nation's issues very differently. On the one hand, Asta wants to bring everyone together in unity, while Conrad believes the only way to achieve peace and equality is with people who also want the same things. Ultimately, things never really go beyond that though. Conrad does spend some time talking about the limits of the Wizard King's power, but there's no context brought in to explain exactly what he means until the matter is already decided. And as for the other three, their backgrounds are never addressed at all outside of the promotional manga for the movie. The issue of societal inequality is a crucial theme to the story of Black Clover, and I think introducing the idea of revolutionary action as something for Asta and company to grapple with is an excellent direction for the series to take, but it doesn't feel like it was done with the amount of justice that it deserves. No pun intended. Mind you, I did still enjoy the movie. The animation was just mwah. Not to mention there being more than a few interesting moments that I'm confident will be addressed again in upcoming chapters and episodes. Not to mention the Wizard Kings and Queen themselves being absolutely amazing to watch on screen, backstories or not. But those are just my thoughts and opinions on the matter. Feel free to share yours down in the comments down below, and don't forget to leave a like and click subscribe if you're interested in seeing more Black Clover and anime content in general. Until next time, peace.